My first guest created the newlywed game and the dating game. You know him as the host of The Gong Show. Let's take a look at a clip from that show right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, here comes Dr. Flamo!
It is my pleasure to introduce the game show king, Chuck Barris. How you doing? How are you?
Fine. I'm fine. A little nervous. You know, when I used to wear these hats, that was so I wouldn't see the audience, you know, and I could see the cue cards. And it's kind of strange seeing, you know, there they are.
We could get you a hat right now.
No, it's okay. I'll try to brave it through this thing if I can.
All right, now, the Gong Show, where'd you come up with that idea?
Well, I thought, you know, there weren't any variety shows on television, and there weren't any place for good acts to be seen. So I thought I would do a variety show in which we would show good acts. So I went out looking for good acts, and we couldn't find any. I mean, we found a lot of bad acts, you know. So I thought, well, okay, let's do a bad act variety show with a couple of good ones. But it was a tough show to sell. I mean, you know, walked in the vice president of the network and said, I got this great variety show, we do bad acts, you know. And he said, well...
It's going to be terrible, you'll love it.
Yes. Well, what's the hook? I said, well, if the judge doesn't like the act, they gong it, and it has to leave the stage immediately. And that's what we did, and that's how it began.
Now, you did the dating game, you created the dating game, the newlywed game, but you hosted the Gong Show. Why did you decide to host that one?
Well, the host that we had really didn't understand the show. You know, he thought it was a stairway to the stars, you know. And he couldn't understand if an act was bad and J.P. Morgan said, get that act off the stage, those socks are ridiculous. The host was appalled. He said, you know, what a way to treat a talent. And no matter how I explained to him, he couldn't understand it. So we had to get a new host. And I called the vice president up, and I said, we need a new host. And she said, either you do it, or I don't think we can do the show. And so greed won out, and I did that show.
Was it fun? Did you enjoy being, you know, on camera doing the show?
Well, first I caught asthma. I had asthma immediately from sort of a reaction to this. I didn't know exactly how this was going to work in my life, and it turned out to be incredibly, it was just fun.
Yeah.
I had the best 4 years, and then I guess I realized I was really having a midlife crisis right on coast-to-coast television, but it didn't matter. I was having a good time.
It wasn't Pee Wee Herman was on the Gong Show a couple of times.
Many times. The rule was you could only do an appearance once because it was a competition. So Pee Wee came back, Paul Rubens came back 8 or 9 times as different acts, you know, an Indian lounge singer, whatever. And he was always funny. He was fabulous. And then eventually, you know, he became Pee Wee Herman. But it's funny because in the 4.5 years that we did the show, we really didn't have any other stars except Pee Wee. So I guess that says something.
Well, come on, you had J.P. Morgan.
Oh, no, well, she was already a star. I mean, you know, Jay was great.
She was the one who I didn't know when I was watching the show. I knew who Jamie Farr was, and I sort of knew who Rip Taylor was. I had no idea who J.P. Morgan was.
And it's funny because...
Who is she?
Jay had a bunch of gold records. I think at one time, Jay may have had the second most gold records to Presley. I'm not sure about that. It sounds awesome.
They say that about Menudo, too.
Did they really?
It's always a pack of lies.
Yes, probably. but she was really, she was a great singer. And I don't know, she kind of stopped singing for a while. But she was wonderful to have on the show because she knew the Gong Show. She knew what we were trying to do, and it was, you know, it was good to see her out there.
Now, you got into some trouble with this show. Is that right? But you booked an act on this show that actually they couldn't show it on the West Coast.
That's right. Well, they were the Popsicle Twins, obviously.
Tell us about the Popsicle Twins.
Well, Conan,
we had some footage, but we can't show it. We'll show it to you afterwards. We'll mail it to you at home.
Well, we would every Saturday we'd come down with 80 acts, and we'd re-audition them, and we'd end up with 40 acts, and they would make the 5 shows that we would do. And we would do it again on Sunday. And every Saturday and Sunday, Standards and Practices at NBC, these 2 people who were watching the show would come running down the aisle and say, you can't do that on television, get rid of a good act.
Right.
You know, and I just kept thinking, this is ridiculous. This is justifying their job. I've got to do something about it. So I started to come down with a really ridiculous act. I mean, something that was unairable. And they'd come running down the stairs and saying, you can't do that, and they would get rid of that act. The Popsicle Twins were one of those acts. Only they must have been out having a cigarette or something because they didn't come down the stairs. And I thought, well, maybe they're not so bad. And I put them on. And they were bad. I was right the first time because the lights lit up in the East Coast and the show never made it.
They would eat popsicles in a seductive way, and we'll leave it at that.
That's about right.
But it did get out to the East Coast.
Yeah, it did, and then I was summoned immediately to the president of the network. But
I wish I could have been at that meeting.
Yeah. Well, I write about it in my book.
Hey, it's... That is, of course, Gene, the Dancing Machine. We're going to go away for a second. We'll be right back. Forward, Chuck Barris.